Fresh and Buzz.
All right, welcome back to the Instant Speed Podcast, brought to you by www.fabdb.net, and that's all I got. This is Fresh and Fresh and Buzz. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and I'm joined by a great friend, Mr. Flake. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. When you said you had an impression of me, and it's not like you just hit me with this today. You hit me with this at the bar with like 2 or 3 pints already in me, where you said, I've got an impression of you, but I'm saving it. And I was so delighted to hear it because typically most impressions of people are just the same voice. You know, it's like, I'm Flake. And I was just kind of waiting for it to be that. It wasn't. It was so good. I appreciate it. I love it.
You know, you really do have this really distinct timbre, kind of like great cadence to your voice, and you know you're right up in that little higher register than I am, and I kind of like to go up there a little bit with it, and it's a lot of fun. But I'm happy you're back on the show, man. We had a great weekend hanging together in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And it was great, man. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time, minus certain things that we could probably jump into. Yeah, my departure or my knocking out, as it were, from the tournament were for circumstances not card related that we can, I guess, sort of explore a little bit if you want to. But I will say it's funny that you should say timber in my voice, because on the plane ride home I watched The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, and in that movie is Morgan Freeman, where one of the characters describes his voice as timbery. So that made me want to do my Morgan Freeman impression, but I don't know if that is appropriate for this show. I don't know if that is something that you would want to hear.
I mean, hit me with it. I mean, you know, I'm sure a lot of the buds out there love Morgan Freeman, so let's hear it.
All right, here we go. I went on the podcast. It was hosted by Tommy Fresh. I didn't know what I would hear, but I was always pleasantly surprised.
That's actually really good.
It needs a little work. I mean, I need to warm up to some of these, now and then.
We'll get it. I mean, eventually this podcast is just going to be all impressions, I think. So, but today, well, actually, we're going to get into some stuff about Philadelphia, but I want to start with the Crack It Pack, so we can kind of just really get into it. We're going to be cracking an Everfest pack, which is made of paper. It's not going to sound the same, but it is going to be just as fun, and we're going to get right into it. Have you opened many Everfest packs?
I've opened about 3 boxes worth. Nothing major, no fabled, no legends. I did get a bunch of sweet cold foil like weapons, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. No like major hits, like those like huge like crazy pulverized like full arts or Winds of Eternity full arts, but I did get some I'm satisfied is what I'll say.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get some hits today. Now, actually,
I'm fairly lucky as like a good luck charm for everyone but myself. That guy Mike that you met, when he decided, like, it was his first time playing. Well, I don't want to say first time. He had really picked up the game like a week prior to entering the tournament, and he really was dead set on getting Lexi to work. So he had a lot of reps with Lexi before I just gave him my ninja deck and said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" And he was really committed to Lexi post tournament. And when he bought a box of Aria, and I think it was like his 3rd pack, he opened New Horizon cold foil. So he's like, this is a sign. This is absolutely a sign.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, I met Mike. Mike was awesome. And but we'll see if we got any heat in this pack first. First out of the pack is Macho Grande. This is the yellow one. 7 resources for 9 attack, 3 defense, dominate, guardian attack. I've seen some people talk about the blue one for, kind of like more budgety versions of old school Bravo.
Well, anytime you get a keyword built into it like that, and plus it's like what? It's like 8 attack, right? And blue?
Yeah, an eight attack for the blue.
Yeah, so 8 attack, dominate. You're going to squeeze out at the very least. I'm thinking like 5 or 6 damage out of it. So that feels pretty sweet. I mean, unless they're kind of just pocketing an immovable on you, but ultimately, like that's I think a fair trade. If they're gonna, throw an unmovable at your common card, like I'm happy about that.
Absolutely, and to be honest, this is actually when I looked at Macho Grande initially, it's essentially Glacial Footsteps for 1 extra resource, but you don't have to fuse. Is the 1 extra resource worth not having to fuse? I actually think so, especially with Seismic Surges running around. It's decent. Next, we got Blue Blade Runner. This is a card I like quite a bit. It's 1 for a warrior attack reaction. It's 3 defense. Target one-hand weapon gains go again. Your next weapon attack this turn gains +1.
That's a you thing. That is, warrior and me don't get along.
Yeah. I mean, so this is a card that I really like in Dory Axes, and I think it makes it quite viable right now. So, big fan, cool art. We talked about it on Az's video set review. I believe some funny comments about the steam coming out of the boots in that card were made.
that made it to like the preview stinger for that whole thing. Was the fact that there was some like swass exhaust coming out of the boots.
That's what it was, swass exhaust. Yeah, that was a good time. Next we got Twin Twisters. This is the yellow, 1 for a 2 attack. Ninja, 2 defense. Choose 1. It gains 1 this hits. Your next attack, this combat chain gains +1, or it gains +1 itself, and it has go again. Nothing too exciting. I think with leg tap is just this.
Yeah, the commons in this set were not all that, I guess, spectacular. I think. I mean, besides perhaps some of the, I don't know if it was like some of the auras, but even the auras were rares. Like the common aspect of this set was not all that fantastic.
It was like draft chaff in a non-draftable set. I felt like a little bit, but we move on. Rotary Ram is next. This is a 0 cost, a Mechanologist action with 3 defense. Your next Mechanologist attack action card you play this turn gains +3. If you have boosted this turn, put Rotary Ram on the bottom of your deck. Go again.
What's the cost on this card again? It's 0, right?
Yeah.
Like I think all the classes typically have something along these lines where it's like you have the free +3, right? And there's some sort of effect associated to it that is, to a degree. So this one has like a boosted bonus. And I've seen some people kind of discussing a little bit about a more aggressive version of Dash with that uses like boost and stuff, where I can see that this could work. The problem is if you're going aggro, do you really want to recycle? Like if when it says put it to the bottom of your deck, when you want that recursion effect of putting cards to the back into your deck, typically non-attack actions are not what you want to see late game, right? So it has that upside of being able to be resilient, let's say, against a fatigue or like more of a control oriented deck, but at the same time, these are not the cards you want to see back. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's more, you're adding more sort of fuel back into the deck for boost effects, but if you're getting to the bottom of your deck again, you've probably already lost that game.
Yeah, unless and this is not what you want to do in turtle situations. But I believe Capolo, who was on last week, had made a good point that it is good against Bolton because it is a non-attack action. It's not going to give the Bolton attacks the +1. So it seems like a stretch to put that in your sideboard unless Bolton's running rampant, which it is not, which we will get to. Next is Pyroglyphic Protection. This is a wizard action. Aura. This is the yellow one. 2 for a 2 defense aura. If your hero would be dealt arcane damage, prevent 2 arcane damage that source would deal at the beginning of your action phase. Destroy this. Yeah. Maybe some weird sideboard tech with the red.
Maybe. Like, this is also really good at making sure your table at Starbucks doesn't wobble.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of these cards are. you probably need the whole stack. Next, we get Zoom In. This is another Mechanologist action. This is an attack, though. This is the blue ones. 2 for a 3 attack, 3 defense. When you attack with zoom in, opt X, where X is the number of times you've boosted this combat chain, and it has boost itself.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's not replacing anything that was.
Yeah, I mean it's not the Cold Foil Bravo that's like at the back of the pack, right? But it's still good.
I did get a peek, and we're not so lucky. But this next card, I'll tell you what, Flake. This next card pushed. It's a card called Seismic Surge.
You got a foil Seismic Surge?
It's not the foil. It's just a regular.
Well,
it's just in the pack.
Okay, so this is gonna level out the table at Wendy's.
Yeah. Some people want the Seismic Surges without the backs being something else, but outside of that, we do have a foil here. It is a common, but it is a decent common. It is the yellow Coalescence Mirage, a 2-costed. The yellow is 6 attack, 3 defense. Illusionist attack action has Phantasm, and when it is destroyed, you may put an Illusionist Aura card with cost 0 from your hand into the arena.
Well, if you got them, I mean, there's a lot of them now, right? There's like Pierce Reality and like Shimmering or something Haze or Shimmering Haze or whatever. Like, there's a bunch of them now that exist, and to cheat them out, the beautiful part about that is the fact that like you're not really getting go-agains off of those bad boys anyway. So typically, it's such an awkward attack strategy where it's like it's a nice way to end out your go-agains when you're attacking face with your auras there for one. But in Philadelphia for the past like several days, I was doing a lot of prism mirrors like for practice, and it was that situation. I'm like, okay, do I attack their Ode to Wrath or do I drop Shimmers and Silver or whatever? Like, is that what am I gonna? You have to make a decision in that point. But ultimately, I figured, you know what, like, it's still not good enough to put it in a Prism deck. So
yeah, it seems like it may be something in the future, but nothing right now, I don't think. The first rare is a card I know you're a fan of. Is EBTT, even bigger than that. This is the yellow one, 0 cost, generic instant. Play it, or play even bigger than that. Only if you've dealt damage this turn. Opt to then reveal the top card of your deck if it has power or attack greater than the amount of damage you've dealt this turn. Create a Quicken token and draw a card.
I truly believe that if you are going to put, like, we played this a little bit in, I added this to my Aggro Ninja. It's good pitch, again, because it's, it's got the 0 cost. I think that the yellow one is the one that you're looking at. We tried it with, like 6 copies, 3 yellow, 3 blue. Eventually, we kind of play tested with both, then we took out the yellows, and then we just played with the blues. And the amount of times that we would play it and whiff off of just a single opt, it was more than you thought. Like, it's just, especially in a deck that doesn't necessarily, it has a bunch of attacks that'll go fairly tall. You'd think that, like, off your second Kodachi hit that you're not going to whiff on it. But with the amount of blues that are just like 1 or 2 attack that really fuel how the Ninja deck runs, having a yellow one to opt that extra card was a better decision. Not to mention the yellow would pitch for Surging Strike or Command and Conquer if you're playing those 2 cards, or if you're attacking with those 2 cards. So it did get the ball rolling on certain things. Blue did the same, but yellow was just as effective for the most part.
Yeah. Now, the last rare is a card I'm not a fan of. It is High Roller. This is the 0 cost Brute action.
Is this the one where if you roll the dice and you gain +X to your attack?
Oh, no. I think that's Rolling Thunder. This is the one that has Intimidate. And if you've rolled a 4, 5, or 6 on a die this turn, instead Intimidate twice, go again. And it blocks for 3. There's that.
What's the cost on this thing again?
It's 0. It is 0. So Intimidate is nothing to sneeze at, but I don't like that it requires you to already have rolled the dice to get the bonus.
You have to, basically what you're doing is you have to open with Scab Skins and then play this and hope that your Scab Skins were effective. And then you can go you play that and then you play your attack and then you swing with Club or something and feels good. But you said it has to be a 4, 5, or 6, right? So you're already getting
Yeah.
2 action points on it. So it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, my turn is going to be huge, or I'm going to be pretty disappointed. So
You
pick your poison.
you're already, leaving your life to variance when you're playing brute. Do we need to add more variance? It is what it is. It's good in KO or KO or however you pronounce it. But that's probably about it. But yeah, that's the crack pack. Those will go in the giveaway. I'm actually changing the way I do the giveaway. I think we're gonna start giving it away on the Discord. So for the listeners out there, the Buds Discord is in the Linktree. So check it out. But we're gonna get to a conversation with Flake right now. The Philly Battle Hardened was this weekend, my friend, and we got to meet in person. It was awesome.
Finally, we were in the same building in Orlando, if I'm not mistaken, but
Yes,
our
we
paths
were.
never crossed.
Yeah. I mean, that was a little bit like us really chatting a lot, and before I had you on my podcast and I was on yours, and obviously ever since then the ball's been rolling since. Now, how did you enjoy the weekend leading up to when we met? Because I came late on Saturday night. I know you were there earlier, maybe like Friday, and then you did some side events on Saturday.
I did a side event on the Saturday. When you showed up, you caught me basically in the middle of a Dalen Mack like study session, which is nuts because I don't think I've ever met anyone who has that kind of. I mean, I've met people who have like significant levels of drive in their game, and I've spoken with Dalen many times, but until you meet the man and you just see his true passion, ability, and dedication to improvement, you do not know what a true competitor looks like. Because I was there, and keep in mind that like I had the day before, I traveled from Toronto to Newark. I got driven from Newark to New Jersey. It was a long day. I woke up early the next morning. We drove into Philadelphia and played and set up and did everything all day. And like it was like 11 p.m. and we're practically getting booted out of the venue. And Dalen, and I am not kidding, would every time that we'd finish a game, he'd be like, "Man, just one more game. Listen, dig deep, buddy. This is how champions are made." Like he's giving me the whole any given Sunday pep talk. And I'm like, all right. One more. And when you walked in, you mentioned you're like, oh, I'm only going to be there like at like 11 o'clock. I was like, oh, am I going to be awake? What am I going to be doing? This and that. I was still at a table with Dalen when you showed up. So it was nuts.
It was quite the scene to walk into. I walk in and I see Dalen, you guys are just jamming games. And Rick from BCW was right next to you guys, which was awesome to meet him as well. And I gotta say, like throughout the week, because I brought cards for you, I brought cards from Dalen, and Dalen had been chatting with me all week. He's like, I need these cards, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can bring those. And he's like, oh wait, I think I need these cards. I'm like, man, this guy's changing his deck quite a bit. And then when I saw it in practice, that like real intense drive, he's like really analyzing everything. And we went to go grab drinks at the bar. And he's texting me. I look back. It was after midnight. He texted me. He's like, "Do you have this card?" I'm like, I texted him, "Hey man, stop changing the deck."
Yes.
I was like, "You got this. Like, you're gonna do well." He's like, "I can't help it," and it was awesome. But you're right. I had never seen that kind of drive, which was pretty incredible.
It is incredible. Again, for those who do not know Dalen Mack is he played in the NFL. That level of competitive drive is, I guess, what brought him to that level of being a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And now, he's had some super high finishes in major tournaments for Flesh and Blood. And his goal is to win one of these big ones. Like it's that or nothing essentially. And I saw the fire in his eyes when we're just, first of all, he's one of the nicest, most generous dudes out there, like super nice. But just practicing, and then I remember when we were just discussing, what's going on. Like I think he was like 4-0 or 3-0, and he lost the match, and he was devastated because I don't know if he threw a match or whatnot, but he got beaten in a close match, and it you could see that it just it pierced him to the heart,
Oh yeah.
because that's just who he is. So tough go. It's a tough go. I think he was 4-1,
4-2, I believe.
4-2 ultimately. Yeah, he
Yeah.
lost his win in against the chain player that he kept telling everybody to worry about. He's
Oh
like,
yeah.
he was like, there's a chain player out there lurking around. He's like, it's this deck that I am not aware of. I'm not familiar with it, but I keep seeing this guy climb the rankings, and he lost to that chain deck. And Dalen Mack is an incredible card player, like absolutely S tier card player. The guy is nuts in terms of how he sees lines and how he prepares. So just being around him and being able to practice with him for the week leading up to it, and then for the day or so on the Saturday before the main event, it was spectacular. It was great for me. Like I just through osmosis of watching him play and practicing with him, I became a better card player just like that.
Absolutely, and he does kind of rub off on you, like when you start seeing him getting in the zone, because that's what it was. Like when I was chatting with him during the tournament, I was like, okay, Dalen is in the zone, and I feel like I should be more in the zone, right? You start wanting to be in that zone that he's in, and it's like it is pure competitiveness. It's pretty incredible. And I guess I should shout out. I believe the chain player was Daniel Rakowski, who actually plays in my LGS here in Jersey, and he's been playing chain for a long time. He's a great player. And I believe he got second, and we'll get to the meta in a bit. But before we start talking about the decks and the meta, let's get a little bit of the state of the Instant Speed podcast. You had actually two big announcements in the past couple days. The first being that, well, you had already had James White, creator of Flesh and Blood, on, but it sounds like you're going to be getting him on a regular basis.
Yeah, so he has been incredibly accessible. Even before he was on the show, he was very, very into the community in terms of just keeping his finger on that pulse and making sure that things are going well and that the players and the people who are enjoying the game are being taken care of and are enjoying themselves. And there will always be people who are unhappy about things, but having him on the podcast was a revelation, not just necessarily to me about the type of person he is, but also to the community, the fact that he just didn't shy away from a lot of the questions. And now I know that a lot of people may have not been satisfied with the answers given, but at a certain degree, the answer, is the dissatisfaction because the answers were not clear, or is the dissatisfaction because the answers were not what you wanted to hear? So that's the distinction that needs to be made. But James's interview, I will say, I did my best to prepare well for it, and I knew that it was an opportunity for me to represent the community and their interests. And I think that James did a good job of not shying away from anything, because the way that this works for all those out there, it's a basic courtesy and professionalism to give your guest or whoever is going to be on the podcast sort of a run of show. Now, if it's myself and Tommy here, we're buds enough that if we get it like the day of, it's just basically topics that we've already discussed privately, saying, hey, we should do an episode talking about this stuff. So it's just kind of like it's just for our own interest to make sure that we don't miss anything. But for the James interview, I gave him all the questions in advance, including the community questions. And I said, it's a professional courtesy. I said, if there's anything here that you do not want to talk about, I will not ask you, because that is part of journalism. It's sometimes you need to, if you want to have somebody do you the favor of being on your little show, then you don't want to ambush them, because that's not how this is done, right? So I will say this: every question that I approached him with, he said absolutely 100%, including the channel fireball box break mess up, including I told him about first edition versus unlimited, it's not working, things like that. And he even added stuff to the pile. He said, I want you to ask me about bans and erratas and how they affect the game and how they're perceived. I said, damn right, let's do it. So I threw that on there, and it was very well received, and I was very happy that the interview was taken in by as many people as it was, that James was the kind of guest that, you know, you dream of having on the show. But the more important thing was when I reached out to him to thank him again for doing the show and tell him about how awesome the community response was, I was aware that there was a lot of people who were commenting and saying this is something that should happen more frequently. So I reached out and asked him if this was something he would do once a year. I said, would you be interested in doing, and now the term, you know, quote unquote, state of flesh and blood is not a term that I coined. It was somebody else who commented on my tweet or on the video saying there should be a state of flesh and blood address like this once a year. So I brought that up with James, and the way I framed it was, James, this is such a service to the community and it's so well received that I think that you should do this again. I'd like to invite you on once a year to the show to do this exact interview, but, you know, with whatever the most immediate and pressing concerns are. And his response was like, and I'm paraphrasing, but like, screw it, let's do it twice a year. And I was like, hell yes, let's do it. So he said, basically, there's a bunch of events that are going to be happening. The best time to position this would be somewhere in mid-June to late June. So let's aim for that. And I said, you are the boss. And that was that. And it's in the book. So I'm very, very privileged and lucky that James is not just as accessible as he is, but willing to continue to be so moving forward. This wasn't just kind of like a token thing out that he threw out to the community to say like, yeah, I created the game and it might be going through a rough time, so I'm just going to throw out like a random interview. No, he went to the community to answer the community questions and remains as accessible and as concerned as he was when he did it the first time.
And I gotta say, it was refreshing, and I've always felt that it is refreshing, whether it's reading an interview from him or it was when he was on Red Zone Rogue's channel or now the Instant Speed podcast. He really does, for me, put any kind of worries at ease, because he makes it feel like it's really in good hands. It really he makes it seem like it's his baby, you know, which is really important. I think that kind of authenticity is really what we really need in something like this, in such a young game, like with serious competition with other card games out there. And, you know, obviously props to you. You did a great job. The questions
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And the questions were great. I think that it was nice to see, you know, some questions that maybe are a little uncomfortable. Like, right, you're asking this guy who created this game these hey, listen, hey, this is kind of wrong, and you know, and he responded with class, and I thought that was pretty awesome. So it's great to hear that he's going to be coming on your show twice a year now. That's super exciting. Now, there was another announcement that you made today, actually probably like 3 hours before we hopped on the mics. You're going to be writing for Channel Fireball.
Yes, I am going to be writing for Channel Fireball, which is awesome. I was kind of looking for, not necessarily for an outlet, but I mean, I've worked for Channel Fireball for the U.S. Nationals as part of the casting team and the broadcast crew there with other phenomenal human beings like Tannen Grace and Red Zone Rogue and DM Armada, whom I worked with and was just in awe to work with them because they all brought something exceptional to the crew. And Channel Fireball, the team that put that together, people like Jeff Foster and I only know him as the Biscuit Jesus. I know that sounds ridiculous as a name, but he is basically sort of a technical producer, and he was awesome, and everyone there was just fantastic to work with. So I reached out to Channel Fireball and said, hey, I have some ideas of stuff that I want to perhaps write or do, and I'm just going to throw a bone out there and see if there's a bite in terms of your interest. And they said, well, you know, we like what you do, but what do you offer? And I said, well, I'm not going to be somebody. I'm like, the approach I took was the same approach I take in all the content that I've ever made. I am myself. I am not trying to be anyone who I'm not. I am not trying to convince you or sell you on a version of myself that I'm trying to pump the tires on. What you see is what you get. So I said, I'm like, I'm not here to pretend that I'm a pro. I'm not here to pretend that I'm a world champion. I'm here to tell you what it's like to be somebody who's a very good card player, but not a professional, that never was on a team, that never won the big one, but dealing with those same anxieties and desires and ambitions that maybe a pro once had when they were in my position. The same type of problems that the casual player has, like the type of player who reaches pro rank in Gwent or legend in Hearthstone or whatever, but never makes it to those big tournaments or never qualifies for them because they either don't have time or they're dealing with other stuff. So the way that I basically pitched it is I said I want to be I want to dig into all of the I framed them as softer skills aspects, things like how to deal with ladder anxiety. How do you grind and deal with the anxiety of maybe losing rank or losing progression or whatever, or how do you deal with a colossal misplay that costs you a major tournament or a major game or whatever. Like I've won many armories, but those are small stakes. And then I won a pretty big, a pretty big local tournament, like $1,000 tournament locally. And that was like a next step. And then I top 8'd at a pro quest. But like every one of these extra additional steps was new territory for me, and how to deal with it was significantly more important to me than digging out like a pro level deck tech. I wanted to learn more about how to deal with a colossal loss, because my top 8 was just that. I lost in the top 8 match. However, I had lethal and I misplayed. I had lethal. I could have been in the top 4 and who knows what, but I misplayed. And that haunted me. That followed me home, and it kept me awake for the night. And I had to talk to other pros to ask them, like, how do I deal with this? How do I get through this? And to the pros, a lot of it was like, well, you'll just do better in your next top 8. I said, well, I've never been to a top 8. I don't know if I'll ever get back to a top 8. So these were the kind of concerns and issues that I had very little training on from other articles, because I've never really read much about that kind of about those kind of concepts and those concerns and issues that so many players struggle with. And let's be real, the people who are consuming these articles, 90 some odd % of them are not professionals. So where's there's definitely appeal to get information from the top level players, but there's also a certain branch of it that is just unexplored and not necessarily accessible to the players who want to know how to deal with networking and community, and where to find resources for testing when you don't know anybody and things along those natures. So that's what I pitched to Channel Fireball, and I said I want to write articles about this, and they were all on board. So I'm very, very lucky enough to say that they're going to be publishing my content on Channel Fireball. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I think it is very important to have that kind of content out there, and I've talked about stuff like that too. And we look at Philadelphia, right? Over 100 players, only 2 of them got PTIs. That's 99% of those players are experiencing those same things. So it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to that content. I have to learn how to read, which is is going to be the biggest step for me, but I'm excited. I'm excited for you regardless, buddy. But all great stuff going on in the world of Flake. But let's talk about Philadelphia. Let's talk about the decks that we played. What deck?
The decks. I'll gladly talk about the decks.
What deck did you land on, and why?
Okay, so it's the same problem that, just sort of calling back to what I was talking about, the problems that a lot of the non-pro players have is also one of those issues is card accessibility and not having a full collection. I initially, when I got into the game, I invested in Ninja because I liked the game. I liked the hero. I liked the style, and it was also a viable option. After that was Briar. It was a pretty swift and fairly economical, transition from Ninja to Briar. You didn't have to invest too much money. Let's say you buy a Grasp of the Arknight and you go from there. But when this happened, when this tournament, I'm like, I need to try something new, because like I could just go to Ninja, but I don't want to. It's time to learn something new, and I ended up buying a lot of Guardian cards in preparation for Starvo, or I call them Brass, like BRA, like Bravo, and then Star of the Show, SS, like I call them. I just
like
call
that
them
one.
Brass. I call them Brass. So between um just anticipating that I thought Brass was going to be pretty good, I bought a lot of Guardian pieces that I didn't own because I never played Guardian. So I figured, okay. But then there was a lot of chatter about what beats that, and Prism was something that was way up there. So I started scooping up Prism cards. And it came down to it. And again, I partially blame Dalen for this, because I could have probably just locked it in. I'm very much the type where I'm like, I'll lock it in now and just own it and practice and see what happens. But Dalen had me bouncing between Earthbriar, Prism, and Brass, and like just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Eventually I said, you know what, man, I'm locking in Prism. So I got the cards, and that's where that went. And Prism was a hero that it's not so straightforward, especially when you're playing an aura build that has so many extra layers, and you need to really pick and choose your spots of where to play these cards. And it was a process. I learned how to pilot the deck, but again, when you're practicing with people like Dalen Mack, you're going to get your ass beat all the time.
Yeah.
So that was part of the fun.
So I'll tell you what, talking to both you and Dalen, because you both were asking me to bring some cards, which I had, and I was more than happy to. I was like,
thank you for that. Holy hell.
and I was like, oh, okay, both these guys are on. They're both on Prism, and I knew Starvo, Brass, whatever you want to call them, was going to be a big competitor, and I did feel that Prism was a great matchup against Starvo, and I didn't want to play Prism. I'm not a huge fan of how the deck plays. I'm not comfortable with it, so I was like, okay, what do I play that will beat Prism? Because I felt that everybody was thinking like you two, right? I felt that that you guys were like, okay, Brass, Starvo is going to be really good. Let's do Prism because I think it has a good matchup, and I thought Prism was going to be running rampant. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play Raiden Bolden, and I'll beat up on these Prism players. Now, are you familiar with the meme that like Bird is like, the risk I took was calculated, but man, am I bad at math.
Yes.
I got whomped by Starvo. I started out 2-0. I beat a Doriaxis in a really close one, and I beat a Earthbriar, and then I faced 2 Starvos in a row, and they never missed their reveal. And I guess I should shout out to Tyler Kretschmer, who did top 8. He's a buddy of mine from Philly, and he was piloting that Starvo deck, and he gave me a nice old whomping. And I would say I made a poor choice. Would you say that you made a good choice with Prism if maybe the feeling in your gut from maybe a few too many IPAs the night before wasn't there?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's well, let's be real. My first enemy was the Hangover. that was my first opponent. Quite a resilient one too. That just didn't want to get knocked down. To say the least. I mean, like the thing is that like going in with Prism, I was actually fairly confident that I understood what the deck tries to do. Dalen really put me through the ringer the night before in not only the mirror, but like how to play it. But nobody had a Starvo deck ready to go that we could practice against. He merely said that he himself had practiced against it so many times, and it was very, very simple for him to pilot and go. He's like, they're gonna miss certain things, and in the instances where they don't, you should be okay. Like, it's not the end of the world between your spectral shields and let's say a soul shield or an arclight sentinel. You'll be able to withstand the naughtiness. It's gonna happen. And the problem is that my first matchup was the Prism Mirror, which was to me the most complex thing, especially when you've got like a Merciful Retribution and an Ode to Wrath and a bunch of things popping on both sides that trigger your spectrals, which trigger their spectrals, which triggers Ode to Wrath, which triggers this, blah, 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 blah. It was really awkward and weird. However, I got I got my first matchup was the Prism Mirror, and I got basically I had my own anus FedEx to me overnight. Like it was just full on delivered right to my face. It was like, here's your ass, I'm serving it up. Like you're not even gonna get a chance. The win, I believe I won that match, even though I lost like 34-0. I believe I won because the dude across from me was so nice and said, "Hey, I really like your podcast." So I was like, I don't care if I lose. Like, this is amazing. So that to me was a win. But man, I thought I'd do better. I went 0-1 to start, and basically, if you go 0-1 to start, you're done. Like in a small field like that.
Yeah.
And then I went 1-1. I went 2-1. I was feeling really good, and I ended up losing to a Viserai player who basically said, "Hey, here's some stuff that you didn't prepare for. Here's some cards that you probably never seen." And how do you like 7 to face with like an 8 arcane kicker? I was like, yeah, that's about it. So,
Yeah. The prism choice, I think. I mean, you had to hope to just play against Starvo all day because all those Viserais were running around. It's got to be a tough matchup, I feel like, and same with like the Briars too, and I guess a couple chains. There were a couple chains which we'll get to. It was a tough choice, and I know Dalen was on the same path, and he was doing well, but he ran into some Viserai and Chain. I think his losses were Viserai and Chain, which is tough.
well, when you're not prepared for it, I don't think that he was necessarily too worried about Chain, because even in the side events on Saturday, it was like my first foray into playing a non-casual match, let's say, against people with that Prism list. I went 0-3. I paid like $37 to get 0 prize tickets, but a load of load of knowledge and education is what it is. I always say it at the end of my podcast. I always say you're not losing if you're learning, and I definitely lost something there, or I definitely learned something there, I should say. I lost something too, $37. But
U.S. or Canadian?
That was U.S. So there goes my rent for the month. The fun part about it was I was playing against matchups that I was not familiar with, and I took the wrong approach on either side. I should have been aggressive against the Katsu, and I should have been more defensive against the Chain, and I flip-flopped those, and those were 2 games I absolutely could have won. I absolutely could have won. So it's knowledge. You're like, okay, when I face a Katsu, I'll be a little bit more aggressive, and when I face the Chain, I'm going to sort of sit back and try to fatigue them, which I absolutely could have beaten the guy. Dalen was watching that match against the Chain, and he saw how I was playing it, and he didn't say anything. But after the match, he's like, "Hey, you could have you had that in the bag if you just sat back and blocked more, because they were going to run out of gas, and you just ran out of life. Like that was it. Like you could have had that, no problem." And so when Dalen was looking at that, and he's thinking that we had a plan against everything. Like we've discussed it. He says, "This is what we're doing against Chain. This is what we're doing against this, that, blah blah blah." The main concerns obviously were Starvo, and the Mirror with Prism is what we suspected was going to be the majority of things. We thought Earthbriar was certainly going to be a problem, but we never, ever, ever suspected, not necessarily that Viserai was going to be as good as it was. We didn't think there was going to be as many, but they didn't even make it to top 8, right? So I don't think that which was surprising. Like Chain made it to the final. Like it's just, what year is this at this point? The Chain keeps getting there.
No, it's pretty. Well, it was a brand new, and we'll get to the meta actually. Before I get to that, I do want to say that I think the hardest thing about, especially Classic Constructed, right? There are so many decks, and it's so hard to prepare for every single matchup. So you have to focus on what you think you're going to see, and it's like I don't think you're necessarily wrong to think that you were going to run into just Starvos and Prisms all day, because that's what it looked like online, right? That's what people were talking about, and it's hard to say because it was the first big tournament after Everfest, and it was quite a shocker. Obviously, you're half right with the Starvo, but let's talk a little bit about the meta. So the top 8 was 5 Starvos, 2 Chains, and 1 Briar. So five decks from a brand new hero from Everfest two decks from a hero that's gotten a major ban in the past, and one hero that had a serious errata in the last month. So the power is still innately there for sure. We saw a Starvo take it down, but Chain did make it to the finals. Daniel Rakowski, as we were saying. Would you have expected that top 8 leading into this?
Well, the top 8 was there. So you said it was 3 Starvos,
Five Starvos.
Sorry, 5 Starvos, a Briar, and what? 2 Chains.
2 Chains.
Yeah. So and the way that the bracket was set up, the semifinal could have actually been 3 Rune Blades and a Guardian. And what does that stink of? It stinks of every other meta that we've seen, right? You whether it be Briar Chain versus Guardians, which would have been Oldhim and Bravo, right? So it could have gone a completely different way. It just didn't. So you see all the Guardian Bravo, the Bravos sort of just made it to the top. And in terms of what the meta is going to be, I think that Starvo is just a very powerful. It's a very powerful hero that I think perhaps within the design process they thought that the requirements to have the hero ability pop off would have been a little bit more difficult to have the right recipe for, that perhaps it wouldn't have been as consistent as it was. Now, it could have just been good RNG for those players who, every second turn were able to have the hand necessary to pop off on a massive dominated attack. But that could have just been an outlier. So at what point are we looking at this and saying, is this actually just... Think about it this way. How many Starvos didn't make it, that maybe sort of flamed out 3-3 or something because they weren't hitting the game text as much as they were. And the ones who did make it through were not only just good players, but they managed to find the cards that were necessary. But also at the same time, how many of these players are holding on to key pieces like pulses so that they can 100%, not 100%, but you know what I mean, like more consistently pop off on those dominated triggers when they need to. Like, these are things that need to be assessed. These are things that need to be sort of thought about, because otherwise, like, what are you gonna do? It's the way that the meta sort of just shook out was that a very powerful hero that has a very powerful effect was able to, with a vast pool of amazing cards, was able to go ahead and smash through. Now, the best assessment that I ever heard about Starvo was Dalen, who said, "Yeah, do you want a chance to win a tournament? Easy." He said, I think he said, he's like, 3 Oakenolds, 3 Crippling Crushes, and 2 boxes of Aria. He's like, there you go. There's your deck. That was the best thing I ever heard that weekend. He's like, there you go. Go win a tournament. I was like, nice.
I mean, it's true. It seems so much more consistent than I think they ever anticipated. I saw some numbers, people talking. It's like it could be up to 70% consistent on hitting on your hands, and which is pretty crazy. Now, the one thing I take away from this meta is there's going to be a huge target on Starvo's back. I think there will always be the people who are going to play the best deck, and they will play Starvo, and they will probably win. But I think there are plenty of players, and I know me myself, I'm looking at like, well, I don't want to play this deck. What is it weak to? Yeah, and it's weak to on hits. That, it's weak to like Winter's Bites and stuff like that, like stuff that's going to take cards out of their hand, right? So we will see what that even means. I mean, maybe we need another Isaac Jessen to be out there with Ice Lexi and just like, slam on these Starvos. Now, what are your predictions based off this first large tournament for the rest of this ProQuest season? Because we have like a lot of ProQuest coming up in anticipation of Pro Tour New Jersey.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot down the pipe in terms of competitive Flesh and Blood, and I'm so excited not just to play in them, but to be aware of them, to just follow them along and just see the evolution of where these decks are going. But it's a good point, because we've seen this before with Briar, have we not? And what's amazing about this is that when Briar at US Nationals, and prior to that at UK Nats, when Matt Folks had like the first kicks with that deck, and went, he went like, what was it, like 10-0 or 12-0 in that tournament.
Yep.
The first shots with those decks, it just seemed like as soon as that hit the board, everybody jumped on it, everybody figured it out, and everybody brought it to the party. And that kind of fizzled out because as more and more tournaments emerged, there were more and more opportunities to go ahead and tinker with stuff and figure out how to beat it and figure out how to play against it, figure out what tech in or out or what heroes are good against it, etc. And then Briars were like, okay, 6 of 8 top 8s were Briars, and then it was like 5 of 8, and then it was 3 of 8, and then there was only a pair of them. As more and more other heroes, as Oldham emerged, and there was some Lexi, there was the reemergence of Chain from his brief slumber. So I think that this might actually be the same situation for Starvo. Starvo, still a fantastically strong hero, same as Briar was, but Briar eventually was, they kind of cracked I don't want to say they cracked the code on her, but they did figure out some weaknesses and some vulnerabilities and what heroes were better suited to take her down. And not just in terms of, because the original strategy was like, okay, what beats Briar? And Ice Lexi did a very good job of sort of punishing Briar to a degree, but it wasn't necessarily well positioned or had a decent strategy against some other heroes, let's say.
Yeah.
However, what it did do, what these other heroes did well was like, okay, we have a strategy against Briar, but we also have a strategy against everything else. And I think that that's where Starvo is eventually going to fall into, is that category of a lot of people are going to jump on it, but there's also going to be a vast amount of big brain people who are out there to just kind of neuter it the old-fashioned way, which was by letting the meta settle itself and not relying on bans and whatever. Because the amount of people who are out there crying foul about, oh, Starvo's busted and this and that, if you paid attention to the evolution of Briar was a spike to the top, like a meteoric rise, but then it was this gradual kind of fall back down to reality where it was no longer a tier S. It was just a very good deck like everything else, because other heroes caught on and figured it out. And I think that that's going to be the same trajectory as Starvo is. So everybody who's out there kind of crying that the sky is falling on not just the meta, but the game itself, because there's one really strong hero, give it time. It's one tournament. One tournament with only a few people out there, and there are a lot of people who are at the drawing board trying to not just figure out how to improve Starvo, but there's a lot more people are out there who's trying to figure out how to beat it.
Absolutely. And that leads me to my next question. So, and I think I know your answer, but LSS, I actually want you to tell me, overreaction or not an overreaction, LSS pushed Starvo too far?
Well, I think it's a little bit of I wouldn't call it an oversight, because when I spoke to James and he was telling me about how he has under his wing like a roster of world championship card players whose job it is for 40 or 50 hours a week to play cards and find these weaknesses and tweak them and figure it out. That said, is a global community of people playing a game a better barometer of a card's impact on the game than a smaller little Illuminati cabal of big brains who are testing them? Yeah, I mean, but you cannot put it all on this group of play testers to figure everything out. They could sit there for years to try to figure out these cards, and eventually, if you put it out into the mass, somebody's going to figure something out. And that's kind of maybe what happened. I think that the issue is that perhaps a lot of the way that they envisioned Starvo to play may not be the way that Starvo was picked up by the masses, whereas the cards that they would have anticipated were going to be auto-includes or something, like maybe that's not the case. Maybe they didn't think that there was going to be as many non-elemental cards being threatening. I don't know. Long story short, I really think that they may have just missed the mark in terms of the clip at which Starvo can use his leader ability. I say his leader ability. That's the Gwent in me. The hero, his hero text to get that massive bonus on those attacks.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree. Yeah, maybe, a little bit of an oversight. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. From a top-down standpoint, if I were to design a Guardian that needs to show every single element, it makes sense. But it's very strong. But, talking to a mutual friend of ours, Drew Cordell, who's been on the show, I believe he's going to be on your show, when these cards are spoiled, he was looking at, like 5 different ways to build Starvo. because he's the guardian guy. He's the GG. So, and it is interesting. That was the coolest thing about Starvo, was there was so much diversity in terms of how it could be built. It feels right now like, I know, looking at numbers and looking at results, it feels like, oh God, there's only one way to do it. And I think that's probably not true. So I'm interested to see where it goes. But for now, it looks like it's everything Starvo, and probably I think a lot of people are going to be breaking out their old chain decks and playing around with them after we get some deck lists from Philly, for sure. I know I'm looking at my little Channel Fireball deck box next to me that says Chain CC that I haven't picked up in 5 months. So yeah,
Now's
man.
the time.
Yeah, so before we go, I just want to give a shout out to you. You're a great friend. I'm happy to have you on the podcast, and I just want to mention that it was great to meet internet friends in person. I think it's an amazing thing, especially like nowadays, right? Sometimes these internet relationships and like being on the internet all the time could feel like so cold and empty. And I think we miss out on a lot of humanity, and it was good to see you and feel the humanity, and it was very awesome to spend time with you and Dalen and get to meet Rick, and it's something that has been great about Flesh and Blood. James White's talked about it. It's all about the flesh and blood, and it's only rung true ever since I've been a part of the community. So I wanted to thank you for showing me the humanity, and I also wanted the listeners to know that the humanity is out there. You have to be willing to give it and receive it as well. So
I gotta say, like, for all of those who are out there, a lot of the people that I interact with, or you interact with in that matter, we don't meet face to face, maybe a handful of times in a year, because beyond just the COVID, we're all over the world, and we share a unique passion, and that's what it is. It's flesh and blood. But the fact that sometimes there's that little bit of, I don't say awkwardness, where it's like, I spoke to you on the internet, but who are you in reality? And for those who are unaware, Tommy is one of the most genuinely kind and caring individuals, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was a moment where, I mean, it's no I don't hide from it. Like, I have mental health issues sometimes, like that. I suffer from depression, and there are ups and downs, and I had one of my worst downs of my entire life in last month, and one of the people who were there for me was Tommy. And it's weird because I didn't know him very well, but we became very close friends from that moment on, not just because we did this, we were on each other's podcasts, or we liked the same card game, but we just were friends. And that's what was odd about it, because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you feel like you've known someone for so long. But Tommy, when I was slightly inebriated to a degree on the Saturday night, but there was a moment where you and I were just walking to the bar, and you stopped me, and you said some very, very kind words to me, and just reassured me that you got my back, and I will carry that with me forever, because it's a very important thing to hear. And I thank you, man, because you are an A tier, S tier, whatever letter is beyond S tier human being, and I appreciate that. And you are an example to the community of what the community should strive to be, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, and I wanted to let you know, and I do think it is a great thing to put out into the world that you are allowed to let the people that you care about know that you care about them. So because sometimes it's not always a given, right? Some people might not just believe that. Sometimes they need to be told that, and that's it's an okay thing to do. And yeah, and I'm very grateful to have made a friend out of this game and making this content. So
Hell yeah,
hell yeah,
hell yeah. Even though the tournament for me ended in a Wawa parking lot, that's a
Wawa is a wonderful place, and when you told me that you ended up not feeling so great at a Wawa parking lot, I said, well, there's worse places to not feel great at, because it is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gas station.
Well, if I heeded Dalen's encouragement, the tournament would have ended all over the table in Game 5, which I didn't want to do. It was like Dalen was literally saying, he's like, man, he's like, you get some XP, you get some tickets, you can trade those in. He's like, even if you lose the other two, it's like 7. He's like, you get like 300 or 400 tickets. It's like 8 packs of Aria, man. He's like, how many mythics is that, or how many majestics is that? I'm like, you got to stop selling me on this, because I'm gonna puke on the table, man. And lo and behold, on the way back, my buddy Mike, who, for those who are unaware, my buddy Michael Torek, who is a very, very close friend of mine, and he was a pretty, I don't want to say a big deal, but he was a player on the Magic scene for a while, a really, really excellent card player, picked up Flesh and Blood like this week. And he is so committed to this game now, where literally we had 2 hours to kill before I had to go to the airport. He's like, come with me. And he drove me to his LGS, where he took out his binder of like expensive Magic cards and traded them all in for boxes of Aria. He's like, this is how committed I am. I was like, God damn, son, no problem. So he is on the warpath. But yeah, we were driving home, and he's like, hey, he's like, you want me to pull in and get you like a Gatorade or something to drink? I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. So we don't have Wawas in Canada. I had no idea what it was, but we pulled in, and I make much of my apologies to whoever has to clean up the parking lot, because it was like it was the equivalent of just sort of like busting open the door, leaning your head out like you're gonna tuck and roll, and just letting the parking lot have it. I know that might be a little bit graphic, but I felt so much better afterwards. That's what happened.
Well, yeah, big shout out to Mike, who I just met that weekend. He was awesome. It was good to hang with him. I enjoy his propensity to party and have a good time and gamble a little bit. So
Yes.
he was a really cool dude, and he seems like a really great player. And I did see on Twitter he changed his bio to Flesh and Blood player, which was kind of funny. Like he did like a nice little video of it, right? And yeah, he was a really cool dude, and obviously helped you and took care of you, which was great too. But
Yes, you did.
so thanks again, Flake. I want you to plug everything you need to plug right now.
Alrighty. Let's see. So, I'm just looking at the list of things that you've put here. I don't know how active I am on some of these. Okay, so on Twitter, I'm at WatchFlake on Twitter. I'm still negotiating with the mysterious entity that is at Flake on Twitter. I really want it, and it's not happening. But at WatchFlake on Twitter. On YouTube, my content is housed by 983 Media, so you can go to youtube.com/983media, like the numbers 983 Media. They're a production company that does a lot of esports stuff, and they house the Instant Speed podcast and all my Flesh and Blood content there. You will soon find a lot of my written content on Channel Fireball and on, I guess it says Discord. I mean, if you want to reach out to me on Discord, I'm all about, being accessible. I'm not what I have been big timed in my life. Not that I'm a big shot in any way, but I have been big timed in my life by people that it doesn't feel good. I respond to pretty much 99% of messages that I get. So if you want to reach out to me on Discord, by all means, it's Flake #. I refuse to say hashtag. Flake #9 You can go ahead and shoot me a message, and I always reply. I always respond. So that's basically it. I mean, I don't have TikTok. I don't do Instagram. I don't do any of that stuff. So yeah, call me a boomer if you want, but that's where you can get me.
Yeah, and be sure to check out the Instant Speed podcast. Great. If you haven't seen the James White episode, excellent. He had a guy named Tommy Fresh on. He was all right.
Yeah, he was all right.
Yeah, you can check out that episode, and I think he'll be on again at some point. But you guys all know where to find me. Twitter, at freshbudspod. You can email the show, freshbudspod@gmail.com. The Discord is the Buds. We chat all day long. Everybody's really super active in there. We have a lot of fun, and I'll probably be doing the Cracker Pack giveaways in there going forward. And yeah, the YouTube's popping off. I do, little videos, and I put all the episodes on the YouTube, just audio mostly, unless it's a set review. But let's talk about some food before we go, Flake.
Hell yes. And I know exactly what I want to talk about.
Okay, hit me.
Okay, so here's the deal. After the Wawa incident, I had some extra real estate in my gut that I was like, yeah, we got to fill this with something, right? So I was just discussing on the way back to Mike's place, and he said, oh, we can do like a drive-through or whatever. He's like, if you're feeling it. I said, sure. I'm like, what do you got? Like, whatever's on the way. And he was not keen about McDonald's. I was just saying it was because, first of all, I don't say Montreal, in Canada, fast food isn't that cheap. We don't have things like dollar menus and stuff like that. Like we don't. So, when I think of fast food, I was just thinking, McDonald's, like, whatever. And he's like, oh, if you want, we could stop. And then on the way, we were at a red light, and I see a Wendy's. I said, oh man, I haven't had Wendy's in a long time. He's like, oh, you want to pick up a Biggie Bag? I said, what the living hell is a Biggie Bag? He's like, oh, it's $5 Biggie Bag. I said, $5 for a Biggie Bag. Can you explain to me what is in this Biggie Bag? He's like, oh, it's like you get a burger. I said, okay. He's like, you get fries. I said, yeah. A drink, yeah. Nuggets. I said, all this for $5. And he said, yes. I was like, let's go. Giddy up. Like, what are we waiting for? I'm like, $5, dude. I'm like, you want one? It's on me. Let's rock and roll. Because something like that would have probably cost about like 12 or $13, like back home. So we're in line. And at the menu, like at the window or whatever, at the speaker, I just noticed as he's ordering that you can get like an extra 6 nuggets for like under $2. I was like, what? What the hell? So to quote Stephen Yee, what the hell? And I was like, I need to have more. It's not that I need them or anything. The fact that it's $2, I'd be an idiot not to invest in that stock. So. I slammed in with a bonus 6 nuggies on that one, and I will say that I did hit it up another time the next day because you can't say no to a $5 Biggie Bag.
I mean, that's a lot of value, and I don't eat a lot of fast food anymore these days. I worked at a McDonald's at one point, and I just being behind the scenes, you just don't want to anymore. But I will say Wendy's, and I was not exactly familiar with the Biggie Bag. I'm glad I know about it now because that sounds like some good value. But Wendy's can be pretty good. So good that you can't eat it standing up. Your knees will buckle. But
hey, you want to hear a fun fact? Do you know why the meat patties are square?
I think I know the answer, but tell me anyway.
It's because Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, says we don't cut corners at Wendy's, and that's why the meat patties are square.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. And that led to the whole Where's the Beef campaign, right?
I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
Where's the Beef is like a blast from like what, the 70s or 80s or something?
Yeah, I think the campaign was because like all the other fast food places like Circle, you can't see the beef coming out of the bun.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so they had to square.
Where's the beef?
Yeah, so yeah, well, I'm glad you got to enjoy some United States Wendy's. Next time you'll have to get a hoagie at Wawa, if it doesn't give you flashbacks. But thank you again, Mr. Flake, for coming on. You're always welcome here. And yeah, everybody have a great